do need you to let people know about the program that we have, that we offer, and that it's possible that you have people that you know could really benefit from this work. We have such an amazing topic tonight. It's possible for me to explain in really simple terms what cancer is today. So for the people listening to this tape and the people here tonight, it's possible for us to cover a couple of things. First of all, what is the origin of cancer, and that it's not genetic. What is it and how does it get going, sort of thing. Very simple, actually. How to prevent this. We're going to talk a little bit about prevention, and then we'll talk a little bit about if somebody has this condition, what can one do to help turn this around. So I'd like to do what I can to make this as simple as we can, really. So the very first thing that would be really wonderful for us to ever be aware of, some of us probably already have this insight. Did you know that 100 years ago, that's only a short time ago, 1 out of every 100 people died of cancer? So today, that is 1 out of every 3 persons. Yes. 1 out of every 3 persons. 1 out of every 2 persons here will die of a heart attack, and 1 out of every 3 persons here will pass away from cancer. Perhaps. Nada says maybe people listening to this are going to wisen up. Yes, quite possible to wisen up. Yes, that's true. Iatrogenically caused death is death due to treatment, and that's called iatrogenic condition. I think, is it the 3rd leading cause of disease? Death, excuse me. Yes. Right. Right. Yes, there's actually, I've read accounts of it being way more than 300,000. Okay. Eighth largest major cause of death is suicide. Yes. And males commit suicide many more times over than females at every age. From 18 to 25, it's the 3rd largest cause of death for males, I think. But I don't think females, but males certainly. Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? Iatrogenically caused disease, death is probably maybe nearly the 3rd cause of death. And we just heard for the people listening to the tape that the 8th major cause of death actually is suicide. So that's really, I can understand that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what this is. First of all, you might never have heard any information really from the medical establishment about what I'm going to share tonight. And there's a great reason why you haven't heard, and that is because most everything that they're doing at the present moment in researching cancer is very, very unscientific. So it's sort of really fashionable for people, cell histologists and oncologists, the people who are studying cancer, to study this by taking cells and putting them into a petri dish and then experimenting with these cells. These cells in a petri dish are undifferentiated cells, and they are nothing like cancer cells in the body. Cancer cells in the body are more differentiated and have specialized a little bit. They're cells which are specialized a bit more, whereas all of the cells in the petri dishes that they work with are undifferentiated. And it is not like anything like cancer in the body. So when they do experiments in the petri dish, it is so not like the body at all And so it's not likely that they would ever come up with any information this way. But at the present moment, that is the most fashionable type of research to do in cancer research. So, as I said, it's not likely that they will discover anything much at all, because those cells are not like cancer at all. Okay. So as you really, first thing we can say about cancer is that it is it is a mold. Did everybody get that? Yes. Cancer is a mold. A mold. It's the body molding. A mold in the body. So let's just talk a tiny little bit about how it's possible that that can have occurred. Just imagine a large intestine, the colon. I think that cancer of the colon is fairly high. Lung cancer is fairly high. I can understand why lung cancer is high. I can understand why colon cancer is very high. Let's just take a little bit of a look at the colon of someone. Kellogg, who set up the Kellogg's University. Kellogg was an intern and cut many people open to look at their intestinal tract, and made an observation which has been written down and many times has been spoken since. Kellogg probably opened up and saw inside, I know it was well into the thousands, maybe it was tens of thousands of people, but certainly maybe we only need to really look inside one person and find a heart, and then we can just infer that everybody else has a heart, and no need really to look in 10,000 people to discover that everybody has a heart. So we just look inside one person and we can say, well, everybody has a heart, this person does, everybody does. Kellogg looked inside some 10,000 people and never saw in all this person's professional career, never saw a healthy colon. Never. All the colons that Kellogg ever looked at, every single one of them was distended, had some sort of spastic sort of a situation, and most every colon ever had debris within it. So if we could just talk a little bit about how could cancer have arisen of the colon. First, we start out by saying that cancer is a mold. So initially what happens is, if you put ketchup behind the back of your ear, it's a fairly innocuous seeming sort of a substance that you could just about buy in every shop, and then it's put on most everything, ketchup. So we just use ketchup as an example because people are eating all kinds of things like ketchup. But let's take some ketchup, let's put it behind the back of the ear. That's a good spot, really. Way more sensitive than your intestinal tract, by the way. Way more sensitive, put it behind the back of the intestinal tract is way more sensitive than behind the back of the ear. So we take the ketchup, we put the ketchup behind the back of the ear, we put a little patch of it there, and just to see kind of how you're going to do with this. How does the skin do with this? The skin behind the back of the ear is not as sensitive as your intestinal tract. So if it is sensitive, then that's going to be evidence for sure that stuff's going to happen in your intestinal tract if you put that substance on your intestinal tract. So we put ketchup behind the back of the ear. 24 hours later, you peel that patch off, you'll be shocked to discover what you find under the patch. The skin has really, not just a little bit, but really been irritated by that ketchup. Ketchup is not really meant to be in the body, and ketchup is not really meant to be on the body. But it just goes to show you, if you did have a little ketchup and you just put it on the outside of the skin, which is not a semi-permeable membrane at all like the intestinal tract is, but that skin really reacts to ketchup. Ketchup, all sauces that people eat are really like tars and resins. So let's just imagine now, because cancer really is caused because of toxicity initially. So what happens first of all is ketchup just lodges itself in the intestinal tract, and let's just say that there was a laminated bit of debris that was stuck there from feces. If you have to use paper after you've defecated, that's evidence of a stickiness of food having left fecal matter behind in the intestinal tract. And in most people, if you have any expanded girth at all, that's taken up by debris inside the intestinal tract. Any expansion of the girth at all is taken up by debris inside the intestinal tract. So we get a laminated layer of debris which sort of is a false lining, lining the intestinal tract in places. Let's say you eat ketchup. Ketchup gets a little bit behind that, gets lodged between the intestinal wall and this false lining. You've got a little bit of ketchup there. 6 days pass by and the intestinal tract starts to balloon just a tiny bit to pull away from that spot, to try to create a bit more room to clear that away. So it puckers just a tiny little bit to pull itself away from that spot, and the laminated debris is there. Food now, which lots of stuff that people are eating would ordinarily never be able to get behind a false lining, would never cause a false lining, but let's just say you've got a bit of a false lining there, and you ate food like ketchup, or let's say French fries. Ketchup and French fries, or let's say a bagel. So now we have a paste, and that substance comes in, lodges behind that false lining a little bit, causes the intestinal tract to pucker just a tiny little bit more. Now we have a little pocket of debris. So now, because of hypoglycemia, ravenous eating too much, eating wrong combination of food, we don't really have our proper intestinal hydrochloric acid of the upper stomach. Parasites are able to get into the intestinal tract, and they love little pockets. They love little pockets like this. They are just looking for a little pocket. So now, if the kitchen sink is kept clean, it doesn't matter about flies. You never will have maggots. Flies are not the cause of maggots. What is the cause of maggots? If flies are not the cause of maggots, what are the cause of maggots? Yes, a dirty kitchen sink. If you keep the kitchen sink clean and you've got flies, that's not going to equal maggots. But if you keep the kitchen sink less than clean and you have flies, then that is going to equal maggots. So if it's clean in here, that's not going to equal anything. But you have debris in there, that is highly likely that we have parasites in that debris. Highly likely. We end up with mold and fungus and yeast, which grows in that debris. And parasites hide out in that debris. They compromise the cells a tiny bit. Parasites start to burrow through the walls of the cells. Mold and fungus and yeast and mycelial threads grow through the cell walls, and the body goes, oops, wait a minute. The interior of the body seems to be compromised. We'd better do something about this. So it grows some connective tissue to help keep all of that at bay. It grows a fibrous connective tissue to contain that debris, to contain where parasites and larvae have eaten through cell walls. To contain this, the body goes, oh my God, we better just wrap something around this and keep it like that. And so then we end up with a benign. Does everybody know what benign is? It means non-cancerous, but it is cancer really. We end up with a benign fatty cyst, we end up with a benign fatty tumour, we end up with a fibrocystic type of tissue, and that tissue grew to help protect the person. So now any injury to that mass, so for instance in the mass, typically what happens is there's parasites in there. The parasites eventually eat through what the body has created, and so then the body is stimulated to produce rapidly cells which it can help protect the rest of the body with. So cancer really is a very useful protective mechanism that the body has evolved to guard against a breach of the interior. So our body has protective mechanisms to help keep things like this at bay. So this is not genetic. This is simply having a dirty kitchen sink, really, and less than keeping proper levels of oxygen. So, kinds of things that sort of compound this. Eating late at night, eating and having gone to bed with food in your stomach. That is a sure habit that will create cancer eventually. If you've been eating late at night, less than going to bed empty, when your tummy empty, that's what we recommend. You should do what you can to go to bed with your tummy empty. We should not be going to bed with our tummy full. Pancreatin, which is a substance, an enzyme which helps break protein down of the body. Pancreatin, whilst we sleep, is released, and that pancreatin is very important because the pancreatin helps break down neoplastic cells, new sort of cells which are not meant to be there. So pancreatin is the major force which helps break these new cells down. So you can imagine that we have a condition where we've just talked about puckering of the intestinal tract because of debris, that pucker accumulating ketchup and bagels and things like this and potato and stuff, parasites hiding out in this debris, parasites working their way through the cell wall, causing a compromising of the interior milieu, the body sensing this and creating a fibrous kind of a tissue around that to help keep it at bay. Pancreatin at night, if you are making sure that you're going to bed with your tummy empty, then pancreatin goes to work to help break down neoplastic cells and this sort of thing. So without pancreatin, with the debris in the body, then and with excess estrogen. So excess estrogen happens when you drink wine. Wine is liquid estrogen. Wine is liquid yeast. So whenever we do sweets, which are really a non-food, especially starch, things that end up as a sugar in the blood end up as estrogenic more, and this sets the stage for the growth of fibrous tissue, and then less than having proper levels of progesterone and the hormones to help keep estrogen in balance. Estrogen can have run wild any excess sugar that you've eaten at all, and that equals excess estrogen in our body, in the body. Cancer really is caused mostly, first of all, because there was some small injury. Typically, parasites are involved, like pinworms, hookworms, especially for the lungs, and all sorts of fluke worms and things for the intestinal tract, and again, pinworms, hookworms, worms like this, roundworms, ringworm, all kinds of parasites and things have been living in the intestinal tract. And when we eat food which is really not meant to eat, we end up with a material basically that parasites can live off. So this always occurs first, and you might not have noticed that that's happened, and eventually something happens where you've got a bit of an obstruction or something, you go to the doctor and they discover, lo and behold, you have a major condition. How now, before they may have discovered that, you can have a live blood cell analysis done if you suspect the possibility that maybe you have a condition inside that's precancerous. Then we could have a look at your blood, and if we find any acid-fast cell wall deficient bacteria in your blood, that is evidence of a precancerous condition. Those acid-fast cell wall deficient bacteria grow out of the base ground substance of your plasma. They grow out of this. The colloids of this substance transform into bacteria. So this bacteria is no inoculation from the outside is needed to end up with that sort of a bacteria. So from debaucherous type of lifestyle, eating dead foods, eating foods which ended up as sugar in the blood, that causes the person less than to keep their oxygen, and most people have an enormous amount of debris and lots of bile stones, and this debris, the bile stones are condominiums of pleomorphic organisms, and those organisms are being excreted into the body. Bile flows past all of this stuff and seeds tiny proteinaceous material into the mitochondria of all the cells. The mitochondria is the energy generator, and burning solid fuel in the presence of oxygen for metabolism to create a phosphorylation of energy to make adenosine triphosphate to actually have the energy to run the body. When somebody would have been eating dead food, and they would have been eating foods which ended up as a sugar in the blood, that acidifies the body, and that acid acts like a trigger, triggering these acid-fast cell wall deficient bacteria to have arisen. Once these cell wall deficient bacteria arise in the plasma because of a lack of oxygen, they continue to produce substances which they use our body as their own sewer. So they excrete mycotoxins into our body, and they use our body as a sewer, and these mycotoxins cause the body less than to keep its oxidation, and slowly to have the mitochondria, which is the energy generator or the furnaces in the cells, to switch from using sugar in the presence of oxygen and producing adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy molecule, through metabolism. It can switch and get adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy molecule, through a process called fermentation. So where somebody has done foods which ended up with acid-fast cell wall deficient bacteria in the body, when someone less than kept their liver force, which helps break down mold and fungus and yeast, the body cells slowly less than keep their ability to produce energy in the presence of oxygen, but slowly switch to produce energy in a form which oxygen is not as necessary. And this is called what? It's called fermentation. So cancer is fermentation. What is mold? A ferment. What is fungus? A ferment. What is yeast? A ferment. So as you could say, the tissue of the body ends up breaking down into ferments. Oh, okay, that's a good question. So we've just been asked, what's the difference between mold, fungus, and yeast? Let's just say something very simple right now, because most people have no idea. They have no idea. So let's just say what it is. First of all, spores really are colloids of life that have aggregated together into a spore. In modern medicine, they call that a virus. But people who have this insight, they call it a spore, not a virus, because spores have a very usefulness in our body, in our body's ability to heal. And in modern medicine, they have no idea about that. They just think that a spore is the cause of disease, or a virus is the cause of disease, which it's not. A spore is the breakdown product of disease. It is not the cause of disease. Just like flies are not the cause of maggots, but the dirty kitchen sink is the major cause. So spore ends up collecting with other spores and becomes a double spore. Those double spores fuse together, and that ends up as a bacteria. So a virus really is a building block of a bacteria. Now, bacteria slowly develops a harder cell wall, and now we look at it, and it actually is a mold. So bacteria became a mold, and a spore became a bacteria. This is called pleomorphism, many changing form of the same life cycle, which is a truth which at the present moment is not being taught in the medical schools, and that's another reason why they're just so far away from having an insight into what cancer is, because some of these things which are very basic, to having an insight into this, they have no idea about it at all. So be kind and gentle with them, and don't expect them to know, because they don't. And most all the treatments that they would have recommended to someone are treatments which rob the freshness from your body, and that creates cancer. Pardon?
Yeah. I just went to a pleomorphic conference in Ashland, Oregon, and so this top cancer researchers were there, and it was obvious to me, to everybody, that the pleomorphism arises because of the bioterrain, as Dr. Jubb was saying. So it's the terrain that gives rise, the conditions in which to give rise for this process to go on, and yet the doctors never kept talking about the vaccines, the this, the that, and I went up to them and spoke, well, why? Why are we talking about so simply just cleaning out the bioterrain and dealing with this? To me, it was obvious that it was the financial backing. There's no money in this. It makes people just self-clean.
But it is quite possible for people who have to pay out a lot of money, for them to realise, oh my God, there's money in us learning how to do this in a better way. So that's starting to happen, isn't it? Atkins just has got funded, although it's really a less than excellent program. It's encouraging to see the health industry moving more toward a consideration of nutrition as a factor. So that's what's happening with Atkins. I have a feeling actually that things will move more toward this insight, but what NADA has just shared with us is that things are the way they are. Mostly that's true, because there is a collective investment, invested interest. There is an invested interest at the moment in drugs and things like that, and there is not much vested interest at the present moment really in treating things more naturally. So I'll bet you it is making sense to every person here, and you might think it just seems crazy that they didn't talk about cleaning the terrain. They didn't really talk about how the terrain is a major factor in allowing these things to have arisen. Dave?
You explained what a mold is, but what's a fungus?
Oh, good. Okay, let's keep going. Excellent. Let's keep on track. So a bacteria becomes a mold, develops this harder cell wall, becomes a mold. Now, that cell wall, David, grows in colonies, and that mold grows in colonies. And when mold grows in colonies, what's it called? Fungus. That's what a fungus is. And a fungus culminates in its most advanced form in this pleomorphic cycle as a yeast. So you could say this is like a life cycle, starting out as a colloid of life, ending up as a life colloid, ending up as a spore, ending up as a double spore, ending up as a bacteria, ending up as a mold, ending up as a fungus, ending up as a yeast. This is a life cycle of colloids of life that live in symbiotic relationship within us, and as our terrain is excellent, these organisms live in symbiotic relationship with us, and as our terrain would have become compromised, these organisms abandon their role in supporting us, and they turn to their own survival. And they can be producing substances which can have caused the body to have become more fermentive as well. Okay. So basically, you could say that parasites, you could say that mold and fungus and yeast, you could say that a body, terrain, lesson being kept clean, you could say debaucherous sort of living where people are, with gluttony are consuming more than maybe what they should, and certainly having gone to bed with the tummy less than empty. Perhaps this is somebody who snores and they've breathed off all their carbon, so there's no oxygenation of the blood because there's no carbon in the body. All sorts of things can have occurred where a person can have less than kept their oxygen transportation ability. And then once that happens, then the person has debris. That can equal a condition of cancer. Okay, we've got two other components to this today. We'd like to talk a little bit about prevention, and we'd like to talk a little bit about what can we do if somebody has that condition, what can one do to have turned that around, and what have people done who have turned things like that around. So far we've talked about what is cancer and the origin of cancer, and I've explained in simplistic terms the origin of cancer basically. So before we go on to the other two sections, I wonder if there's any questions that relate to how cancer can have arisen. Okay, leukemia, you really could say that wherever the body can sense that something is amiss, it wants to deal with that. So leukemia really is because of debris in the body, and red blood cells de-differentiating from a red blood cell into and re-differentiating into a white blood cell. That's how you get white blood cells. They were originally red blood cells. So when we have debris in the body, the red blood cell transmutates itself into a white blood cell to help clear away the debris. When somebody has leukemia, it is just simply that the person has a lot of debris in their body, and it's a defensive mechanism to help clear things up. So children can often have got that mostly because of dairy products. I don't think there's really any epidemiological research that shows anyone, I think, who has ended up with leukemia who hasn't had milk products. Yes. Yes. Galloping leukemia is just simply where there's a lot of debris in the body, and then the body has to develop a system to help to clear it away, and there is no feedback mechanism occurring quite like there should be, and then it just is sort of a running away kind of a condition. Yeah. Kathy? Yes. Okay. Yes, it is a little, right? But we're kind of talking about something sort of similar. But let's talk about fibrocystic situation. For fibrocystic situation, it can be of the breast. It can be in any place in the body, basically, really. But now, how does fibrocystic condition arise? Certainly, most conditions of the breast, fibrocystic condition which end up as cancer, can have occurred as a result of soft tissue injury initially. That's very common. That's more common than anything else. So soft tissue injury can have occurred first. And because of a compromised terrain, the body never really was able to heal properly. So let's say, for instance, let's say that because of underwire, that's very common, or having a small contusion as a result of bumping into the table, or quite possibly because of injury because of breastfeeding, maybe. But actually, the more a woman has breastfed, the less likely it is that she could end up with a condition like that, because the lymph glands and everything have opened up more, and there's a little bit more energy that's flowed. Whereas for someone who less than has had any children, she can have a condition where mammary glands haven't produced and there hasn't been a flow much, and so they can have more of a condition of a possibility of congestion. So just for instance, we can have bruised a little, we can have little soft tissue injury. It can have occurred because of, certainly when a bra comes off, if you ever can see red marks where blood was less than flowing properly, see, that is absolutely detrimental. That is very detrimental. Say it again? Piercings are, no, that can be probably okay. No, that might not really do anything much at all, no. But you see, you should really make sure, of course, that you're using something that's fairly pure, but there's not much pure things, Kathy. So the gold that you have, or the silver that you have, or the platinum, or whatever, it is an alloy. Same with steel. You see, surgical steel is an alloy. It has a little tungsten probably in there and other things, dissimilar metals, and that creates a little bit of a galvanic electrolysis. But probably that's okay, Kathy. But tattoos also are okay. No evidence really that has affected anything much. But it is amazing, isn't it, that you see a tattoo and a person can have come and gone themselves, but the tattoo remains. It's interesting, isn't it? Ketchup is like the tattoo. Our cells can come and go, but the ketchup can remain. Snoring, that's right. Snoring, yes, because snoring causes a person who is snoring, they are breathing off their carbon. And they end up with congestion because of this. It's a protective mechanism. If you're congested in the morning, it can have been because of mouth breathing, less than nose breathing through your sleep. So when we have to have carbon to have a proper oxygen, carbon dioxide dissociation of the hemoglobin. You need carbon dioxide present in the tissue for oxygen to be released.
How do you avoid it?
You can put surgical tape over the mouth, if that's agreeable. You can spray MSM water into the nose, which can help create a proper tonification. But the most important thing is that this person would make sure that they are breathing through their nose, because it's a great error. It's a grave error unless somebody is breathing through their nose.
It almost seems ironic to recall recently hearing, like in the popular media, that ketchup, I do believe, prevents cancer.
Okay. Yes. When they say that ketchup perhaps helps cancer, there is evidence to show that the oxygen singlets, singlet oxygen antioxidant sort of elements that's in tomato are helpful in managing fermentation. But of course, ketchup is not. And the evidence is just simply from epidemiological research. It shows that people who eat tomato, and of course, there's carotenoids and there's some things in the ketchup which have survived the heating, but there's lots of sugar in that ketchup, and that's detrimental. Ketchup creates cancer, and any tomato, if it was ended up like ketchup, would also create cancer too. But it does show that dried tomatoes and tomato paste and things has a lot of these oxygen singlets in it, free radical scavenging singlets in there. So tomato can be helpful. There's lots of other substances in tomato also which can help guard tissue against fermentation. But ketchup might not in the same way because of the sugar and things in it.
You're saying cystic fibrosis conditions, maybe soft tissue damage.
Yes, and overgrowth of, because of a lack of MSM, we don't have the system for collagen stopping collagen production, because you require methylsulfonimethane for this. Without the proper chemicals within, the body less than has its feedback mechanism working as well as what it can, and so things can have overgrown. So as far as breast health is concerned, someone can have bruised and have a slight more bruised, and then because you're eating foods which are estrogenic, lacking progesterone, fibrous tissue can have grown in that spot. Now there's a little fibrous tissue there. The immune cells can't quite get into that as readily as they can, and then any parasites that you have in your body can lodge in places like this. Now, if let's say you're doing Mountain Dew because you love it, or let's say there's a few Pepsi lovers here, then that's going to equal Cancer City, that combination of things, because the Pepsi and the Mountain Dew has solvents in it which that has an affinity for fat cells. So someone does the Mountain Dew and that has toluene in it, and that has an affinity for the brain cells, and the blood-brain barrier was compromised a little bit because of hypoglycemia. Parasites end up in the brain. Ordinarily, they wouldn't have got there. The immune cells can't quite clear these away because you've been drinking Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew puts toluene into the brain tissue. Immune cells can't travel anywhere there because immune cells become wiped out in the presence of solvents. And so we end up with condominiums of parasites, and those parasites burrow through walls of cells. The body goes, oh my God, we have to protect ourselves, creates a little fibrous tissue, bam. You end up with a benign tumour. Person never bothers to clear anything up at all. Parasites grow through the walls of that benign growth, breaching the cells again. The body senses this and then produces rapidly cells to help keep this at bay. Is making sense? If this is making sense to you, then you have a greater insight than most people in New York City as to what cancer is, certainly doctors who have no idea. Okay, so let's talk a tiny bit in the time that we have about prevention. What are some of the kinds of things one can have done to prevent this? First of all, you can be bringing in live foods. Life begets life and dead begets dead. The terrain could never have become compromised unless you were eating dead food. Life begets life and dead begets dead. Life helps alkalize our body and bring spare electrons in. Life force is spare electrons. Dead is no spare electrons. Once we have spare electrons, it's possible to quench free radicals. Otherwise, those free radicals can compromise the terrain, and mold and fungus and yeast and parasites can grow in a compromised terrain. Mold and fungus and yeast compromises the cells more. Mycelial threads grow through that, and then the body has its adaptive response to help protect itself, and that's benign tumour. So indirectly, you could say that the more antioxidants that you're bringing into your body, the better. Is there any antioxidants in flesh? No. That's why flesh is very detrimental. every other food you eat that is a food that came from, the table of the Lord, you could say, or what's really a food that we're supposed to eat, has all of its enzymes present. It has everything present. When you would have eaten a food which was other than a food you should have eaten, that created deficiency, and that causes the compromising of our terrain, and that indirectly leads to fibrocystic kinds of conditions and overgrowth of collagen and these sorts of things, and then that ends up as cancer. So now, all things which end up as sugar in the blood create fermentation. Most all sweetener is really, we should consider it to be non-food, a non-food. Be kind and be gentle and be soft and be allowing. Maybe it's better to have a tiny bit than to have gone completely without. And I know someone I've just connected with, and she started doing the fast, but she only did 5 days. And the reason why she only did 5 days was because, of course, she didn't really have any coaches. She just did this herself. But a coach would have said, "What are you doing?" And they would have found out that she was under in energy. And she broke the fast because she was absolutely under in energy. So you have to have energy to fuel this cleanse. This cleanse really is like a steam shovel, and you need energy. You absolutely need energy to fuel this. Most fruit is okay, but some fruits really are going to end up as sugar in the blood. Certainly starchy fruits, which are out. But then other fruits also. You can be doing oranges and apples in excess, and there's lots of sugar in that and not much oxygen, and that can end up compromising the terrain. Honey also can have ended up compromising one's terrain. That green makes clean, and that sugar in the blood can have compromised one's terrain. Certainly some fruits are out, definitely, like banana and dates, pineapple, carrots, beet. Foods like this are out because they end up as sugar in the blood. But now, a peach, could that be okay? It's possible it could be okay. It's possible, but not necessarily. Somebody has yeast. Could honey be okay? Possibly. Possibly, but maybe not. But possibly. You see, one has to, if we look at any person here, more than likely we can find yeast in your body. But that doesn't mean necessarily just because we found Candida albicans, which is a pathogen, that is pathogenic in your body. Every person, we look at your saliva, we probably can find some yeast, in the mouth. But that doesn't mean anything necessarily by itself. What one simply would ever become aware of is that excess sugar in the blood is very detrimental and would cause a compromising of the terrain. And if somebody already has mold and fungus and yeast and having a major problem, honey possibly could have compounded that, can have compounded that. But to clear this condition up, and then it's possible to start to bring some of those things in again. So what are the kinds of things that can have compromise that is preventative? Making sure your tummy's empty at night because you need pancreatic. Making sure you bring in proper levels of antioxidants. What are antioxidants? What are some antioxidants? Vitamin C is a good one. What else? E is an antioxidant. What's some others? Microhydrogens, which is really vitamin H. It's a negative hydrogen ion. Huh? Carrots. Even considering that Gerson used carrot juice, some people did heal despite the carrot juice, but carrots eaten whole don't really digest very well. Carrots juiced is a sugar which ends up putting sugar in the blood, and it's not a sugar that's managed by the body. But what does carrots have in it that has antioxidants? Beta-carotene. Beta-carotene. Pineapple, it also is a sugar which compromises the body a little bit.
Fresh vegetables have spare electrons.
All fresh, organic vegetables have spare electrons. Ted said negative hydrogen. Negative hydrogen ions you only can find in organic produce that's sun-ripened. You need that negative hydrogen ion because that's a major transporter of spare electrons to help quench free radicals to block fermentation from having occurred. What are some other things that can have compromised, and what are some things that we can have done that can be preventative? Exercise is a preventative. Exercise is a wonderful preventative. Yes, and I know people who just exercised and they turned cancer around through exercise. Yes, by doing a lot of aerobics and changing the terrain of their body to become more oxidative rather than fermentive. So exercise is very important. If somebody doesn't do exercise, that can be a sure indication of a possibility of a condition ending up in life like that. And certainly exercise is very important for helping clear away and helping develop the terrain, the proper terrain. Aerobics is very good, but any kind of exercise shows that you get great benefits. So if you're not doing aerobics necessarily, but you could be doing more power exercise, that also is a great benefit. Matter of fact, power exercises produce more human growth hormone than any other kind of exercise. Power exercise, maximal lift with few repetitions. Fewest reps with the maximal load. It's sort of as a power activity more. And that causes human growth hormone to be released more.
This is like rest.
Rest. Okay, that's very wonderful. Can cancer have arisen if somebody didn't rest? Absolutely, because there can be no human growth hormone, and only human growth hormone is present as one rests. So if one's not resting, it means that cells can be in a state of excitement, never having rested themselves, and that can have compromised the terrain. Delphine? Saunas can be very helpful, and sweating can be very helpful because we clear away what's called racemic lactic acid. A dextrogyl and levogyl are all combined, and we release this when we sweat, and that's very helpful for keeping the cells keep their oxidative potential rather than having switched to have become fermented. Kathy? Yes, it does. Aluminum is very detrimental. Aluminum, if you notice around aluminum, there's water beads on that. Why does water bead up on aluminum? It has the same effect in our body. It causes water to be in places where it shouldn't be. And that's very detrimental. Plus it's spinning in the wrong direction. It's spinning to the left, very much so, which is really like radioactive material, basically. Aluminum is very detrimental. The Romans all died, in their early 30s. They all died mostly, if they really didn't die of lead poisoning, they may have died of something other that was also not a natural death, but most of them all died of lead poisoning. They had spigots and they had all their plumbing done with lead. They didn't know how dangerous lead was. We don't know how dangerous aluminum is. Aluminum is very dangerous. Should not drink anything out of aluminum. Should not put aluminum next to your skin. Should not have any aluminum around you. Should not have aluminum foil, definitely not. You should not eat any food which has any aluminum around it. Alum. Yes. Yes. No. Oh, okay. So now aluminum bauxite can be found in nature, but not aluminum like what we make pots and pans and cans out of. Alum, yes. Yes, they do. They have natural occurring aluminum, which that's fine. Sea vegetables do too. No, that's fine. That can help boot lower order sorts of aluminum out of the body. That can be very helpful. Not the same kind of aluminum at all. Aluminum bauxite you can find in nature, but not aluminum like the aluminum that they make cans out of and pots and pans and things.
Try to avoid solvents.
We should do what we can to avoid solvents. Solvents are very detrimental. Solvents wreak havoc on colloidal systems. Solvents block. What's a solvent? Isopropyl alcohol. Rubbing alcohol. Yes, isopropyl alcohol. Propylparaben. Isopropyl paraben. Then all coal tar products. All chemicals from petrochemicals. Mostly are solvents. Breathing the fumes of perfume, which is made from petrochemicals, extremely detrimental. Putting lotions on your skin, which have coal tar products, extremely detrimental. Eating foods which have solvent preservative in it, extremely detrimental. Solvents are very bad. Hairspray, very bad. Most hairsprays are way less than excellent. But also conditioners and shampoos and lotions because of the preservative and stuff they put in there. Yes, that's right. Yes. Hairdressers have major occupational hazards. Any hairdressers tonight here? Any beauty, any makeup artists? Very bad profession. Yes, asphalt can be a bit not quite right, that's true. Yes. Tim? Yes. 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 Yes, it is. Yes, there's dust and things which really don't help. They don't help at all. They don't help us have good health. But the very things we should totally be concerned about are foods, like fast foods, which is way more toxic than the city air. Fast food like oil-fried sorts of foods and things, starches, and then foods which are packaged, which are put preservatives and things in, they happen to actually be more toxic, believe it or not, than most environmental stuff. Most mycotoxins produced inside are generally more virulent and more toxic actually than environmental concerns. So we could say that we should have a major concern about what we've brought into the body and how well this does within us as far as health is concerned, more so than we might say, oh my God, it's dusty. Yes. Okay, guess what? When anything destructive happens in the northern hemisphere, when a cyclone comes in, which way does the cyclone spin? To the left. All destructive forces in the northern hemisphere here are forces which are spinning to the left. So why is it that people absolutely witnessed the cyclone making a right-hand turn and heading straight for the trailer parks? Why do cyclones love trailer parks? Aluminum, that's correct. That's correct, because of aluminum. That cyclone is so drawn to aluminum, it's unbelievable. That's why you always find cyclones, if there's a trailer park around, it's for sure got the trailer park. You know, it can have missed everything else, but it will head straight for the trailer park. Why? Because the trailers are made out of aluminum, and aluminum is spinning to the left. Cyclones are spinning to the left. Tornadoes are spinning to the left. So, a cyclone is more than just electrons spinning. Have you've seen a cyclone? Aluminum. Oh, aluminum, yes. Yes. Yes, it causes the wrong spin to be on things, and it affects, if you cover an apple in tin foil, it will sully that apple. That apple will never be the same again. If you pick fruit and you put that in an aluminium pail, all that fruit will be sullied by having put that fruit in the aluminium pail. Aluminum is like radioactive material. Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely not. No, aluminum is very detrimental. Yes, they are. You can have a polarizing wand, which I might allow Christopher to have, which if you're interested, you could repolarize your fridge and maybe your window frames that are aluminum and things like that. You can help convert that spin and change the spin. You can change that aluminum into magnesium through this polarizing wand. We used to have them in stock. It is possible to find again for that, but I have a little wand, which is possible for you maybe to use if you're interested. No. All of us that are slightly acidic, mostly, are spinning a bit more to the right than we're spinning to the left. When we sleep, our energy field slowly starts to rotate the other way. I don't know how much truth there is today in that thought that things spin differently in the southern hemisphere. I think that may not be quite right, actually. It may not be quite right. But certainly, wherever there's aluminum in a building, you'll notice that water is spinning in the other direction than it should. So all modern buildings, for the most part, are what's called sick buildings, most of them, because they're made out of materials which really is not meant for health. And most of those materials are supernatural materials. They're materials that humans have made, and actually really are a poisonous type of material. How much more time do we have? Okay, because I want to make sure. So prevention, we talked about making sure you keep your oxidation. We talked about exercise. We talked about life force. We talked about enzymes. Okay, now we are going to talk about, we'll just talk about prevention for another few more minutes, and then the rest of the time that we have, we should talk a little bit about what can one do if they were interested to turn this around. all manners of... See, it is interesting that apparently there is no such thing as a happy person ending up with that condition. That's interesting. There's no such thing as a happy person ending up with cancer. No, that's not true. There's no such thing as a happy person that has cancer. Yes. And that matter of fact, you know, there's evidence to show that people laughed and they cleared it away by laughing. Right? Yes. Because of endogenous opiates and things. Happiness is very important as a prevention. Being happy, being more in joy.
You mentioned benign.
Benign.
What about malignant?
Okay, but how did that benign become malignant? It became malignant by the parasites and mold fungus and yeast bridging the fibrous tissue and the body going, oh my God, we've got toxins again here. And then it creates more cells, you know, to kind of block and keep that at bay more or less.
So that can like occur around the body? Is that
Okay, that's what we're calling, when something could have transferred somewhere else, that's called metastasizing. And now let's just imagine that rapidly growing colon cells, because of a puckering of debris and a keeping of that debris at bay, parasites grew through and larvae burrowed through the cell walls, released toxins and things into the interior terrain, and the body went, oh my God, we need to produce cells to keep this at bay. It produced some rapid cell growth, and that rapid cell growth isn't really sticking where it should. And so now you've got sort of cells going, and now if you're making sure your tummy's empty at night, fine, because that happens to every single one of us here. 200,000 cells on average were neoplastic cells today. Now that doesn't mean that you ended up with anything, because each of us possibly have some degree of pancreatin, and that pancreatin helps break down neoplastic and trophoblastic cells. The tummy should be completely empty before we sleep. If you're a frugivore, mostly anything you ate as a frugivore, the stomach will have been emptied within 40 minutes. The stomach will have been emptied. Okay, if it's fruit. If it's vegetation, if it's fatty vegetation, it can take over 3 hours or more. If it's flesh, it can take over 5 hours or more. The way to tell really would be intuitively, just to feel sense that, you know, you feel empty. Should be empty here. Tim? Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, they do. That's true. Okay, that's a good question. What about the intestinal tract? Should that not also be empty? Tim asked. Should it not be empty? Yes. When is the intestinal tract empty? When? Huh? Yes, after you've defecated. It's empty if you haven't eaten. Right? So that's another prevention. Tim's just reminded of us another prevention. Making sure that you do have the ability to rest your intestinal tract. And that when is the intestinal tract resting? Let's say it again out loud. When we defecate. Once I've defecated and I haven't eaten. Wonderful. Okay. What sort of phony foods? Junk food? Like a Mars bar? Yeah. Could we use that as an example? No, I know. But let's say Mars bar has things in there which actually that would tattoo the body. That actually will tattoo the body. There's things in there. If you had, you know, I don't want to pick on anything, but Twinkies. Let's say you had some Twinkies when you were 3. Those Twinkies that could quite possibly be still in your body, Jermaine. Material from that. Right? Somebody said, what about a tattoo? See, we can have tattooed ourselves with all kinds of stuff that was preservative that was in the Twinkies, which we have a thought maybe that you bring things in and you just apparently just, you defecate it away and that's it. But that's not quite true. Things absolutely don't just pass straight through us. So that's wise for us to ever become aware. So there's things in the Mars bar that takes a while to digest. Mostly the fats in it take a bit of a while to digest. But most everything, because it's a sugar, is just going to get, and that's going to end up as sugar in the blood, and that can compromise the train. But being kind in general, there may be other things you're doing like pizza, which is far worse. Pizza is far worse than a Mars bar. Okay, Tim, and then Linda. Hydration. Urine is very, very wonderful preventative, bringing urine in, because urine helps oxygenate your body enormously, more than hydrogen peroxide. But people can be drinking excessively and causing themselves to be dry, drinking too much, peeing too much. Some people can be not drinking enough. So there's got to be sort of a happy medium there. If you're thirsty, that's an indication that you should drink. But if you're thirsty after you eat, that's evidence that there was some poisoning occurred, and you lost water volume from your blood, and so that's what called for thirst. So let's talk a tiny little bit. Right now we've just got a few minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about prevention. We have some amazing salves that we've developed that we work with people to help express stuff from the to the outside of the body, help dissolve things internally and express stuff to the outside of the body. A salve, yeah, a black and yellow salve. That we work with people with this. We bring in some formulas. We have 3 cancer formulas, which is like it's like a herbal chemotherapy. A couple of the herbs that are in there. Bloodroot is one of the herbs that's in there. Bittersweet is another that's in there. Kibrecha or Paldako is another. If you're interested, do you have that book, Ted? If anybody's interested, this Jubb's Colloidal Biology and the Secrets of an Alkaline Body, that has 3 formulas in this. Plus it has a blood and lymph purification formula. We recommend that people take the blood and lymph purification formula and they take and rotate the 3 other formulas. It explains it in here. So we bring in formulas to help keep mold, fungus and yeast at bay, and we help clear away the bile stones. We do liver flushes to empty the liver continuously. Imagine the liver is like a kitchen sponge, which is sopping wet. Nothing can be soaked up by it. Squeeze it, which that's the liver flush, and now it can mop things up in the body. So basically we're squeezing the kitchen sponge, basically, and everything flows back into the liver again, so it can be broken down. So when somebody has cancer, we immediately go to work to turn this person's terrain back around, to bring back the oxidative enzymes and things like this. Thanks, Ted. We can do various things over the outside to help soften things. It's so incredible that we have some Phoenix physicians who have healed themselves so incredibly from things which most might not have ordinarily thought that was possible. Delphine is one of our top Phoenix physicians, and she's probably one of our more confident Phoenix physicians. Do you know why? Because she's done this process, and she's turned things around. And she's so confident, she's more confident than many other doctors that I know, right? Because she knows it's possible, and she knows how to turn this around. She has first-hand evidence of turning things around. And so it's amazing, actually. I have a student, and she also happens to be one of our top students, and she does readings very, very well. And this is Barracuda. Some people maybe know Barracuda. When she was at the Pacific School of Oriental Medicine here, she was the top student in the school. There was no person there that felt more confident than Barracuda at getting to the bottom of things. Even the president of the university could see that Barracuda had a confidence about things which the president didn't. Why? Because, when somebody has first-hand evidence of how to go about turning things around, and we learn what things are, it gets rid of your wondering. It just gets rid of that. It brings in faith. faith, that's an unreserved letting go. And you have faith in the possibility that we can pursue this in a way that it totally can work. We happen to have someone amongst us, Joni, her name is, and she came to us for many years, and she little by little ended up with a huge tumour that was about 1/3 the size of her face. And then we asked her, would that be okay that we could work with you? We'll put the salve on, you'll do all these formulas, you flush away your kidney stone, your bile stones and things, and would that be okay that actually others could watch this and witness it in the family? And she said yes. So we went to work. 27 days later, tumour in a wooden bowl. Put that in formaldehyde, put it in a jar, brought it to class to show everybody this big tumorous mass had just fallen out, fell out into a wooden bowl eventually. If you saw Joni today, no surgeon could ever have cut her face and her head without having absolutely mangled her and deformed her. If you look at her today, you cannot even notice a scar. It is very amazing. It is very amazing. Hopefully, actually, we can get Joni to come to class so that, it's possible for people to connect with her. We have an absolutely fabulous writing on this. We have quite a bit of writing on this. There's a new book which is coming out, Jubb, Cell Rejuvenation, and that's probably one of the foremost writings of its kind on the earth, and there's some absolutely amazing information in there. We've got some great tapes about cancer. This is the first time that we've talked about cancer in 4 years, and generally we don't go over anything twice. We have some absolutely fabulous tapes on this that if you're interested, you could connect with Eric and let Eric know that you're interested in those tapes, and he could go through those tapes and get those tapes for you. Starch is much more detrimental than you ever thought, and lots of foods and other things that people are consuming is way better than starch. Starch is very detrimental. We cannot completely be healed up unless one really has done what one can to have become more modest with starch and perhaps even to have let starch go, to have let it go. So do what one can. Now move more towards foods which have their oxidative enzymes and away from fermentive. Move more toward, if you have a condition, green makes clean. The leaf that was torn up remains. The apple that was bitten into oxidized fast right before your very eyes. Green makes clean, and green has wonderful amounts of anti-mycotoxic compounds. We have an absolutely fabulous fresh frozen algae, which is very amazing. That is the most superior kind of blue-green algae that you can get anywhere. We have a great price on that, maybe a better price than anybody else can get on it. But it's it is fresh, very, very fresh. You get it frozen, and then you thaw it out in your fridge and use it. You can pour half of it out into a container, put the rest of it in the freezer until you're ready to use it. It is the freshest source of this that you could get hold of. MSM can be very helpful. MSM can be very, very helpful for cementing the cells together. Urine can be very helpful to turn things around. Yes. 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 Okay. No need to. Tumours of the brain are fairly easy to clear up. Yes. And, it's amazing that it's possible that someone can be standing in front of you, right, who actually has helped people turn brain tumours around. I have a beautiful painting that's in storage at the moment, but I have a beautiful painting that this woman gave me. She heard about this program. She was living in New York here, and she sought me out. And when she came to see me, she just wept and wept and wept. She couldn't even tell me what was wrong. She was so distraught, and she just wept. And she told me that she'd done all the conventional treatment and it hadn't got rid of this condition. And I said, oh dear. And I said, would you be willing to do what I say, if this makes sense? She said, oh yes. I said, would you be willing really to follow this to the letter? She said, absolutely. And I said, well, I have a feeling it's possible for you to turn this around if you do. She went, oh, really? And I said, yes. She fasted, she did the nutritional fasting, she flushed away her bile stones, she did these formulas. About 4 months later, she went back to have a CAT scan done, no tumour, gone. Yes. Now since then, every now and then she calls me up every now and then to let me know that things are going good and to thank me. And then about 2 years ago, she sent me this really beautiful little painting, which really meant a lot to her, and it's all about sort of life on Earth. It's symbolism of things going on Earth. Very nice. But anyway, she's completely turned this around. Blood vessel, Jermaine? You could really say that strokes that people can have had can have compromised the terrain, can have caused fibrous tissue to have surrounded that sort of stuff. So blood vessels, aneurysms and things like this, that also can have compromised the terrain where fibrous tissue grew. That could be a kind of a way that the body can have injured, become injured, that can have been a factor that caused things to have come to be. Radiation is going to compromise the person's terrain. Chemotherapy is going to compromise the person's terrain and will create cancer eventually. What is the cause of cancer? Is the body not being fresh. When we radiate and we use chemotherapy, we cause the body to be less fresh. Can you imagine just for a moment, there's this beautiful cream cheese, and we see that there's mould on the cream cheese. So we cut the mould off. Have we healed the cream cheese of mould? No. If we look under the microscope, even though we can't really visibly see, and we just cut the mould off that was visible, you will see under a microscope mycelial threads having grown right through that cream cheese. It's not just on the outside of the cream cheese. Yes, I know. That absolutely wipes out our terrain. See, modern medicine thinks that if they kill something, maybe that will help, but killing makes things worse. A way to have insight would be to do everything we can to make the body fresh again, and that prolongs the person's life. So tumours by themselves are not life-threatening at all, but they can eventually become that way because they can be using oxygen, using sugar. Even in the presence of oxygen, they can be using sugar, enormous amounts of sugar, and producing lactates, which poison the body. And then that causes more blood capillary growth around that, and this sort of a thing. And you really could say that any kind of a compromising of our terrain is bound to have limited success, and that when we have considered killing or slashing or burning or chemicalizing, it doesn't leave the body fresher than it was. It always leaves the body worse off, typically. Yes, it leaves the body traumatized. And while, I know people, they did the chemo and it got rid of that fibrous sort of tissue, it got rid of a lot of other stuff too, but it didn't help them have a better terrain. Matter of fact, it shortened their life. So studies show that if you did not submit on a case-for-case basis, one-for-one basis, do what we can to make them equal. If you did not submit yourself to hospital treatment, allopathic treatment, you live on average 11 years. If you did submit yourself to treatment, you live on average less than 5 years. people who do not submit themselves to that treatment live a longer life, 1 for 1. Yes. Yes.
She has to stay on it for life.
Yes.
And there's no side effects, and it's non-toxic.
Yes. That would be interesting to me, that there is a chemical which is not toxic. Yeah. Yeah. I would say, Ted, I think, who was it? Ted said to us, it's the third leading cause of disease. It's more than likely that your friend may end up with some iatrogenic condition.
Discussion, somebody said that I told them that cutting and burning, yes, it cures, because my grandmother had cancer before and she was completely cured.
Right, right. Yes. Yes. Okay. I like to do what I can to clear up any fibrocystic condition. I like to clear that up thoroughly.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm curious why. I can't imagine how people are still alive.
Yes, but it's so incredible. It's so absolutely amazing. When something has happened like that to someone, it's so incredible. I know people that I work with who haven't bothered with any of the conventional stuff, and they're still living today because they haven't bothered with the conventional stuff. But I like to do what I can to turn those kinds of things around, you know, by using the salve, by fasting to help turn things around like that and help bring relief to the person and help with some hope, that they have some faith that it's possible they can have a healthy life and possible still, yet. Yeah. Okay. Albumin. Okay, that's such a great question. Maybe that's the last sort of question, perhaps. That's a great question for us to finish on. Albumin. Tim, our guerrilla media chief down the back here, asked us about albumin. What about albumin? Albumin happens to be the super transporter that transports all spare electrons everywhere. Albumin happens to transport all nutrients. Albumin happens to transport all cell waste. If you would have had a tumor sort of condition, we can look at your albumin globulin ratio and we can tell if it's possible to recover or not based on your albumin. If you've got enough albumin to transport things, then you have a good chance. But if you don't have albumin, it doesn't matter what goodness you could bring in. It means it's not going to be transported anywhere. How do we increase albumin? That's a good question. We increase albumin by decreasing all the kinds of things that I can have done which ended up as an inflammatory condition in my body. So heat processed food we have to eliminate. We have to eliminate starches. We have to eliminate flesh. We have to do what we can to have eliminated commercial produce. We have to bring the things in which are anti-inflammatory. We have to bring in the things which are anti-oxidants, because oxidization could create inflammation. So the antioxidants help guard against this. So all of our antioxidants are very important. Albumin transports all nutrients, so we need to raise albumin. Delphine asked the question, how do we raise albumin? We raise albumin by being more modest with the dead food. Life begets life, dead begets dead. Doing the castor packs to cool the inflammation, quietening the inflammation down, clearing away your bile stones, halting all the unintelligent action that can have caused inflammation, and then albumin can be raised. And as albumin is raised, it's possible for a person to be able to completely be recovered, you know, from whatever it was. Now we regularly raise albumin, which many doctors have said that I'm lying. No one can raise albumin, but that's untrue. You can. You can raise albumin by reducing the amount of osmotic pressure that you have in the blood, and the Kupffer cells produce more albumin. We help people produce more albumin on a regular basis. I can pretty much tell just by scanning someone how many grams per micrograms per deciliter a person has, or grams per litre. Just, I can scan a person and I can tell you how much you have and if you have inflammatory proteins, but otherwise you could do a blood test, a blood profile, and then you would ask for albumin globulin to be done, which would be crazy if it wasn't, because that's the major indicator. Right, you should have 45 grams per litre or 4.5 micrograms, 4.5 grams per deciliter. That's sugar. That's sugar. A sugar should be 85, between 65 and 85 milligrams per deciliter.
You mentioned having albumin of 65.
Okay, and albumin, it is possible. Oh yeah, somebody who has that amount of albumin, someone who's not eating at all. A breatharian more than likely would have about that much albumin.
But is that on a scale of 45 being normal or 4.5?
Oh, 4.5, it just is a matter of whether it's a deciliter or litre.
Yeah.
4.5, things have become a deciliter.
Yeah.
45 is in grams, and that's per litre. That's
When
all.
you relate 65, it's
6.5 or 65, yes.
4.5.
Yeah, right. 65 is 6.5. Yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? A lot more.
Not 15 times.
No, but that's an enormous amount of transportation vehicles somebody has extra. For every 1 gram of albumin you have extra in your body, that is trillions of transportation vehicles more. Trillions of transportation vehicles more. So for every extra gram you have, that's trillions of transportation vehicles. Now, you may know someone who passed away. I know plenty of people passed away, but they looked all right. They seemed to look fine. How come they just passed away? They seemed to look fine. Matter of fact, I know people, they were dancing and they were doing all this, but then they died. How could it be? They seem to look okay. Often it is because albumin was so low, even though the person looked on the outside like they had their hardware still, internally they had no transportation vehicles hardly at all. Yes, by reducing inflammation, David asked, would we want to lower globulins? We lower globulins, which is a code word for immune proteins, inflammatory proteins. So we reduce the inflammatory proteins, reduce the globulins, and there we have more room in the blood for the Kupffer cells to produce albumin. That's how we get more albumin.
What are prostaglandins?
Prostaglandins are hormones which are produced locally and act locally. They're hormones that act locally.
They stimulate inflammation as well?
Prostaglandins can stimulate and they can reduce. So, they do all sorts of things for us. So aspirin has its work, basically salicylic acid has its work because it blocks prostaglandin 2s from having their effect. And so it reduces the amount of inflammation because of that. But aspirin can affect your thyroid, and the thyroid less than functioning very well can affect metabolism. Metabolism can cause hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia can cause ravenous eating. Hypoglycemia can cause lack of hydrochloric acid. Hypoglycemia can cause adrenaline to be released, and all of this can create acidicness, and it can cause emotional and cognitive challenges as well. Indirectly, hypoglycemia is caused because of starch. Starch is very detrimental. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this topic and this talk tonight. I hope it's possible that I have enlightened you more in simple terms of actually what cancer is, so it's no mystery really. I would ask that it's possible that you, because you're our ambassadors, that you could go out there and you really, with the people you have rapport with, share with them and talk with them. I was going to do a press release for this night, but just I've had a lot of personal things to have to manage, and so I haven't been able to get to that, that we could have done a press release like I was thinking that we would do. So we are going to have perhaps another speaker come to talk that we're lining up. If we less than have your name already on a piece of paper and a way to connect with you, if a list could go round, or you could make sure Where is Winnie? Could you get a piece of paper from the office and a pen so we... Okay, we've got one here. Thanks, Kathy. Can we just pass that round? Let's make sure that we have a way to connect with you. My phone number will be switched to my new address. I just got an apartment today in the East Village. So my old number will be switched to my new apartment. It's 509 East 12th Street, apartment 1B. And the phone number is 212-420-8270. If you'd love to connect with me, connect with me. We're opening up things to be here more as a family, for you to come here to get supplements and everything. I really do ask that it's possible that you could bring someone next time you come to us. Really do what you can to bring someone so that this can be worthwhile. This costs me money to be here. I'd love to make this worthwhile. I can make it worthwhile if we really have enough people. I really do need you to help me. I'm a single person really basically putting the word out there, you know, and I have success mostly because I have such a great family. Without you, perhaps I might not really even be here tonight. But I do need your help in growing things. I do need you to let people know about longevity and to come here to get supplements. I do need you to let people know about the program that we offer, and that it's possible that you have people that you know could really benefit from this work. We have such an amazing topic tonight. It's possible for me to explain in really simple terms what cancer is today. So for the people listening to this tape and the people here tonight, it's possible for us to cover a couple of things. First of all, what is the origin of cancer, and that it's not genetic. What is it and how does it get going, sort of thing. Very simple, actually. How to prevent this. We're going to talk a little bit about prevention, and then we'll talk a little bit about if somebody has this condition, what can one do